Welcome, everyone, to season 3 of Animal Chat Time. As you remember, it's just going to be my face. We are recording right now, but all your lovely faces will be excluded from the recording. Also, today is the 14th birthday of one of our very special attendees, Benny, the little pug that you can see. Happy birthday, Benny. Oh, for his 14th birthday, he is going to learn all about Hammerhead Sharks, just like all y'all. So welcome, and thank you so much for being lovely fans of Animal Chat Time. So today we're talking about Hammerhead Sharks, which are super interesting and super weird, as we know, like all animals. So the first thing we have to know is that a shark is a fish. It's not a mammal, but it is a fish. But how is it different from like a regular fish? So one of the main differences between we call them sharks and bony fishes, is sharks have cartilage rather than bones. And so cartilage is what's like in your nose, it's in your ears. You can kind of it's kind of flexible. It's like bones, but it's more flexible. So if you see a fish swimming, and then you see a shark swimming, they are a lot more flexible, and there's a lot of other things that go along with it. Cartilage is also a lot lighter than bones, so they can typically go faster than fish, which is important when you want to eat fish. They live in water. They use their gills to filter oxygen out of the water. A kind of neat thing is fish normally have one gill, and then they have a plate over top of their gills. Sharks don't have that. They have sometimes like 5 or even 7 gills, and they have no plate over top of it. So so you can definitely see, if you're looking down and you're like, is that a shark or a fish? If you can see their gills, probably a shark. Another neat thing is they don't have scales the same way that fish do. They do have scales, but they are so small. They are actually called denticles, and they're kind of like very, very small tooth-like scales all over the little sharkies. Rather than if you look at a fish, you can see like sometimes quite big scales. They're very, very smooth, and actually in a long time ago, shipbuilders in the UK and Ireland would actually use sharks as sandpaper to sand down the trees that they were making ships out of. That's how the denticles, the very small scales, that's how rough they are, but how little they are. So that's kind of strange. So those are like the big differences between sharks and fish. They skin, they do swim in water, their gills, and a couple other things, and cartilage. So sharks actually have extremely sensitive hearing. This is a super interesting thing about them that I didn't actually really know. They can identify sounds that are much lower than we can detect. So if something is like a really, really low beat or voice, sometimes we don't hear it. Sharks can hear it. And it's not just that they can like feel the vibrations in the water, they're actually hearing it, which is pretty interesting. And it does mean like they are hunters. They want to be able to hear and sense everything. So some sharks can hear sounds that are more than 700 feet away, which is 220 meters. So when you think about like how many boats and things are in the ocean, and like how loud it is for us if we go swimming, it's really loud for sharks. And like 700 feet away, that's super far away. So some scientists think that the shark sense of hearing is actually the first way they detect prey, not actually through smelling. They hear something and then they go, whoop, I need to go smell in that direction. Sharks actually, let's talk about smelling. They have about the same sensitivity of smells as other fish. So most people think like, oh, sharks are super good at smelling everything in the water, and they are, but most fish can. They can detect, sharks and fish, most of them can detect about 25 million per parts of 10 billion chemicals in the water. What does that mean? I have no idea. What that actually means is they can detect 1 drop of blood in a whole swimming pool. So that's what they can smell, which is pretty, like, I think very interesting. I don't think I could smell that. Now, the way that they smell is actually the same way that we smell. So the way that we can smell things is we have like a wet lining in our nose and our cartilage. You know, we always have like, it's good to have kind of a wet nose, like a puppy. And scent molecules dissolve in the wet lining in our sinuses and in our nose. And that's actually how we smell. And so that's the same thing in water. All of the molecules are already dissolved in water, so they don't have to have wet noses. They do because they are fish and sharks in water. So they smell the exact same way that we do. They're just very, very sensitive, which is pretty neat. Now, I said that sharks are made up of cartilage, but cartilage is not bones. So we talk about how long sharks have been on Earth for millions of years, and they're always around, and sharks are very ancient. But if they're made of cartilage, how on earth, this was a question I asked myself, how on earth do we know that sharks were around? Well, this super interesting. As sharks age, calcium salts deposit into their cartilage, and they actually become a bit heavier, but the calcium strengthens the cartilage and it makes it more bone-like. So you can find like dried jaws of sharks that are like heavy and solid and are a lot like bones. And because they're full of minerals, they actually fossilize quite nicely. So we don't really see typically like a lot, like a full shark fossil, but we'll see like its mandible, it's kind of like jaw bones. Also, their teeth have enamel, and enamel like fossilizes really well. So they're made of cartilage, but they absorb so much salt from being in salt water that that calcifies, and that makes kind of like bone-y cartilage, which is neat. So hammerhead sharks, how long have they been on Earth? They have been on Earth for about 20 million years. So that is like their ancestors have been. It's not just these hammerheads that we see around us, but through evolution and through the fossil record, 20 million years, these weirdo sharks have been around, which is kind of neat. People want to know what sharks eat. They eat everything. Everything. There's license plates, fur coats, a chicken coop, a full suit of armor. These are all the things that they found in the bellies of sharks, because sharks were like, what is this food? I don't know. Let's try it. It mostly is not. Sharks actually are omnivores. They don't have to have they don't have to have a diet of full meat. They can have plants and animals. They don't really eat a lot of sea vegetation, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that because it's a bit interesting. Now, also, another thing about sharks, people think that if you put food in front of a shark, it's just going to eat all the time. This is actually not true. Sharks, kind of like snakes, don't want to eat all the time. They only eat when they are hungry. So if you put a drop of water or a drop of blood in the water, sharks are going to be like, I have to eat that. They'll go, I don't, that's fine. Sure, it's grand, isn't it? I don't need to have it all the time. So they can go about 6 weeks without feeding if there's no food around, or they just don't want to. Maybe they have a hurt tooth. The record for a shark fasting was actually 15 months. So sometimes sharks go into like an eating phase and they just like, I'm so hungry and I can't get enough food and I want more. But on the grand scale of things, sharks just aren't always hungry. So those are sharks. Whoa, they're interesting. Let's talk about the hammerhead sharks. So the hammerhead of the hammerhead shark is actually called cephalophile. Cephalophile. I know, Daniel, I had to like write it out because I did not know how to say it when I first looked at it. The longest hammerhead shark ever recorded was 20 feet, which is 6.1 meters long. So that's like a very big daddy. And the heaviest hammerhead shark was actually 991 pounds, which is 450 kilograms. Much bigger than daddy. So they are very tall and they are very round. So the great hammerhead shark is the largest of all hammerhead sharks. Great hammerhead shark. They're about 6 meters long, 19 feet long, and they weigh about 580 kilograms, which is about 1,200 pounds. Pretty big. The smallest hammerhead shark is a bonnethead, sometimes called a shovelhead. I will show you pictures. You know why they're called shovelhead. On average, they're about 5.9 kilograms or like 13 pounds. So they go from like pretty small to like pretty big. Hammerhead sharks have proportionately smaller mouths compared to other shark species. And interestingly, unlike other shark species, during the day, they're often in schools. They're called, a group of hammerhead sharks is either a school or a shoal. Because they are fish, we normally call them schools. So they can be in groups of over 100 during the day. And during the day, they don't hunt. They just kind of like swim around, you know, talk gossip with each other, see how it's going. At night and in the evening, when they go hunting, they become solitary. They go hunting, eat, and then during the day, they swim around again, which is kind of neat. During the summer, there are mass migrations of hammerhead sharks, which is also amazing, where they go to kind of cooler waters. Hammerheads are only found where there's warm water, but they don't like it to be too hot. So they're along coastlines, continental shelves, and all through North America, mostly off of America, not Canada, and then through places like Sri Lanka, Australia, Oceania, things like that. So they're normally like a light gray. They have a greenish tint. Their bellies are white though, which is kind of neat because that means they can sneak up on their prey. So like if a fish is looking up, it just sees white kind of like gray sky through the water, and it also sees white kind of gray belly of hammerhead shark. So hammerhead sharks also have live births. So their babies come out of them, not as mermaid purses or things like that, like other sharks, just a live baby comes out. Normally, it's 12 to 15 pups. They have puppies, but sometimes they can have 20 to 40 puppies. So a shark having 40 babies come out of them. Once the baby is born, they can go off and they're totally independent, but they normally like huddle around together and they hang out and they learn how to be sharks together. And when they're old enough, sometimes they go off, find another school, sometimes they hang out, but they sadly do not need their parents. They are totally independent when they're born. Okay, so let's talk about this hammerhead, the whole reason we are here. So the super neat thing about hammerhead sharks is the ends of the hammer, the cephalophyle, have eyes on it. And the eyes have 360-degree vision on a vertical plane. And so it's not that it's around them on a horizontal plane, it's that it is their bellies and their heads that they can see. Now, if you're looking at a hammerhead swimming, what they actually do is they swim on an angle. We don't actually know why they do this, but we know that they do. Some people think it's because they're kind of more aerodynamic or hydrodynamic that way. But if this is the eye and this is the eye, and they're seeing this way, if they tilt their head, it means they'll be able to see more of the ocean floor when they're looking for food. So that's another idea that scientists are like, maybe, we don't know. They also have increased binocular vision. And so that means they can see up close and also far away because they have these eyes that are so far apart. It's sort of the same if you look at like a deer. Deers have eyes that are very far apart, and they use that because they're prey and they need to see all around them and make sure that they're safe. Sharks do it the opposite way. They have these eyes that are very far apart because they want to see all the food that they can eat, which is kind of delicious. Now, Another really interesting thing is that they have really unusual vertebrae in their neck. And so their neck can actually move a lot more than other sharks. So other sharks, you kind of see like it has a head, but it kind of like goes into the neck, and they're kind of like no neck animals. Hammerhead sharks have like a defined skull, and then they have like quite a lot of flexibility in their vertebrae. And this will make sense in a second when I tell you another thing they do with their hammer heads. Now, like all sharks hunt using electrosensory pores in their ampullae of Lenzerati. What on earth am I talking about? Now, that is in their whole body, but mostly the pores in their faces. Yeah, just like that, Daniel, in the face of the shark. They have all of these pores, and the pores are just like holes in their skin, and they lead to sensory tubes. What? Those sensory tubes lead to the brain. Again, what on earth? But so they have all these open pores that they can sense electrofields generated by other creatures. And so everything creates electricity. The easiest thing to think about is every time your heart beats, that is an electrical pulse. So if you are hiding from a creature whose face can pick up electrical pulses and your heart is going, that animal is like, whoa, I know exactly what I'm looking for. So every time there's electrical pulse, it goes through the water, and the hammerhead sharks, all sharks can feel it, and they're like, something's going on. Where's that thing I want to have? So they can hear the fish fishing around, they can smell maybe there's some blood, and they can hear and they can feel the heart of the animal. So the really neat thing, if we think about a hammerhead shark, is it's not just the nose has these pores, it's the whole long, the whole head of it. And so they're swimming on an angle, swimming like this, and they are sort of like a metal detector that is searching for metal, but they're searching for electrical pulses with this huge face going over the sand and over the whole area that they're hunting. So instead of just having like, maybe I hear something over here, they have this big kind of like antenna dish that they're like, I can patrol this whole area in front of me, which is pretty neat and a pretty good way to find your food. They eat all kinds of different things, squid, octopus, crustaceans, but they love stingray. Now, stingray are pretty neat for a lot of different reasons. Maybe in another season we'll talk about them, but they swim along the bottom of the ocean and they put themselves under sand, and that is how they hide themselves. Now, the hammerhead sharks, that's what I'm talking about. Hammerhead sharks know this. And so when they have their whole hammerhead swimming, first they're listening if there's any kind of disturbance in the sand, and then they are feeling if a heart of a stingray is beating, 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 really scared. And then what they do, if a stingray kind of goes to flee, they'll use their head to bonk, clonk it on the ground and hunt that way. So they don't have arms, they just have fins. And normally a shark will just bite at things, but hammerhead sharks, they don't have to bite. They can use their big old heads to block the stingray so they can eat it, hold it down so they can hunt that way, which is, I think, bonkers and so interesting. You can like watch some videos on YouTube of hammerhead sharks hunting poor stingrays, but it's super neat because, like, can you imagine just having this like big old hammer on your head and going like, no, stay, dunk, and then. So according to International Shark File, humans have been subjects of 17 documented unprovoked attacks by hammerhead sharks since the year 1580. So it's 2021 right now, from 2021 to 1580, there's been 17 unprovoked attacks by hammerhead sharks, and no human has ever died. So we do not need to be worried about hammerhead sharks. They are fine. They can live to be 20 to 30 years old. And I think it's about time we look at some pictures of some hammerhead sharks because they are weird. So let's share my screen. You know, this is season 3. You think I would be quicker at this, but here I am. Okay, hammerhead sharks. So this is a hammerhead shark. Wow. So you can see they kind of have like little faces. They have like, well, they have very big faces. They have little mouths compared to other sharks that are like all nose, all mouth, kunk, 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 kunk. They don't need to have a huge mouth that they suck food into. Remember, other fish use vacuum to like suck a fish in. This guy can use his whole head to pin a stingray on the ground and nibble at him. Seems kind of mean. You can see its eyes, and beside its eyes are its nose. And then if you look really carefully, there's all these dots all along their nose, all along the hammer. And those are the pores that they can feel electromagnetic pulses, which is pretty neat. Now, here's an x-ray, obviously, of a hammerhead shark, and you can see how big this hammer is compared to the rest of their body. So they're using this whole hammer to scan, like a metal detector, to scan the whole ocean to see where there's electrical pulses, what is going on, what am I smelling. All of it is also cartilage, and so it's not heavy on their face or anything like that. It's quite light, and you can also see their vertebrae. All these little back cartilage are very, very flexible, so they're excellent hunters. Here's just another very lovely hammerhead. You can see all of their gills on the side. They have quite a big dorsal fin. And again, you can see all of their pores in which they are using for the electrical pulses. Here is a bonnet head or a shovel head. So you can see that even though it still is a hammerhead shark, they are a little bit different from, like, this is a great hammerhead. This is the ones that are 6 meters long, very, very big. And this one is only 1 meter long, and they have that little like shovel head, also known. So you can see how, you know, you can see how it would be like a little shovel. And again, they do use their face a little bit as a shovel to go down, eat stingray that are hiding in sand. And then this last picture is just so beautiful because this is a school of hammerhead sharks. During the day, they are just having, they're not hunting, they're just hanging out together, they're just being pals in a school of sometimes 100. And then at night, when it's a little bit better for them to hunt stealthily, they will separate, go hunting, go have some snacks, and then come back and tell each other during the day all the fun they had hunting together. So that is hammerhead sharks. Let's have a couple minutes of some questions, maybe.
Wait, why do they have a hat? Like, how do they get a hammer?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. So evolutionarily, what happened was all sharks kind of had like pointy faces. And probably what happened was there was like a shovel. There was a shark that had like a bit of a longer face. But because its face was longer and like more like a hammer, they were able to sense there was more prey. And so they ate a lot more and they did really well. So their babies had a little hammer. And every time the hammer got bigger, they were able to sense more food. So they're born with the hammer. When they're little babbies, they still have a tiny little hammer, and it grows the same way that they grow, the same way that like our noses grow. We always have the nose that is proportionate to us. But in a species, they just did better than the other sharks that had littler noses, because they were able to see that there's so much more food because they can like sense it with their hammers. It's pretty neat. And so it's like there are other species of animals that you know, look like little fish, and then they grow hammers. But these ones, even as little babbies, they still have hammers that are proportionate to the rest of their bodies. And so Mara wants to know where or how long they live. That's a great question. I kind of breezed over it. Most hammerhead sharks live 20 to 30 years. Which is pretty interesting. There is, unfortunately, they are endangered species. There is a decline throughout the world because they get caught in fishing nets. There is less food for them and things like that. So again, it is important to limit fish if we are eating it, but also to have responsible, sustainable fish, because then it means that the hammerhead sharks don't get caught in nets and stuff like that. But they can be 30 years old, which is pretty neat for a shark. The oldest sharks in the world are about 400 years old, and they're Greenland sharks. They live up in the Arctic near Greenland, obviously. But because it's so cold there, they have a really, really low metabolism. So they live a very long time. Because hammerhead sharks live in places like the Caribbean and warmer places like that, they have a higher metabolism. And metabolism is sort of just like your eternal, sometimes if you're a Greenland shark, but your internal clock. So if it's a very low metabolism, then you're gonna live a lot longer. If you have a high metabolism, you'll live kind of shorter periods, if that helps. And I think we have like one more minute if there's like one question or anything. I know it's a small group, so you can ask anything you want.
Wait, how do they see backwards?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I kind of didn't really explain that, right? So the hammerhead shark, so if this is the hammer, we'll say, their eyes are actually not in front. Their eyes are on the side here. And so their eye kind of like comes out a little bit, you know, like a googly eye. There's quite a lot of eye happening there. Exactly. So it's like a googly eye here, and the eye is just so big, it can see all the way 360 degrees around it this way. So remember, like squid eyes can like move around and like, you know, be real weird. Shark eyes can't move that way. They're just such big eyes positioned on the end of the hammer, they can see backwards. And so when they are swimming to the side, they can see backwards, but they can also see so much more of the ocean floor that way. So again, if we look at it in an evolutionary standpoint, it just means that more sharks ate more food because their eyes got bigger, farther away from their body, and they had more pores that they could detect. They could detect the electro pulses in the water. So they're better hunters, so they live longer, so they have more babies, and those babies are better hunters. So it's all about having like a lot of pores, a big old eye right at the tip of their hammer, and really using it to like eat things, you know, not like suits of armor, like other fishies and things like that. Oh, also the shovelhead. I'm going to go over by like 2 minutes. The shovelhead shark, I forgot to tell you this, swims in seagrass, which is pretty interesting because we have a lot of seagrass very close to where I live. And I don't think we have hammerheads here yet, but I don't know. But so they swim in seagrass and they eat a lot of crustaceans, a lot of shrimp and crabs and things like that. And half of the food that's found in their stomach is actually seagrass, because they are way too lazy to like just like the shrimp. They just open up their mouths and have like a bite of everything. So they have salad and shrimp at the same time. And because their stomachs were just full of so much seagrass through, again, evolution, their stomachs got happier and happier with seagrass. So the shovelhead shark that we saw, that shark is the only known 100% omnivore shark in the world, and it's a hammerhead shark. And it came because they were like, oh God, seagrass is just so delicious. I'm gonna just have more of it. So I thought that was pretty neat because when we think of sharks, we think of just like, oh, eating everything, only carnivores, blah. But this one's like, you know, I'll have like a nice little seaweed salad. Thanks. So I do go over time, but I think that's a really cool message for everyone. We have a very small dance because I've been doing this. This is our hammerhead dance, and we're just swimming. We're just swimming as little hammerheads. Yeah. Amy's doing it. I got you. Woo! Yeah. Thanks, everybody. And we're swimming as a school of hammerheads. Oh, it's so nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Welcome back to Animal Chat Time, Season 3.